Welcome back to Dano Does Things. My name is Dano and thank you very much for coming to hang out with me here today. I shouldn't have sat on the swivel chair. This week I'm going to show you how to make pattern weights out of wet felted rocks. Of course, they can also be used as paperweights or just as decorations, but I will be using them as pattern weights. You may be thinking, can't I just use a normal regular rock for a pattern weight? And of course you can, but these are more fun, and if your rocks have any pokey bits on them, then this will make sure that they don't damage your patterns. Now, I've already made a few that you can see here. You can make them funky colors or you can make them look like a normal rock. Either way, it's basically just giving the rock a coating of felt so that it is soft and nicely textured. Now, wet felting can get a little complicated, but this version is super simple. You're basically just wrapping a stone with felt and wet felting it to make sure that it's tight to your stone. Now, I'll quickly go over what supplies you're gonna need today. Obviously, you're going to need a rock. Pick one with a flat bottom so it doesn't move around while you rock it. You'll also need a needle felting needle. I'm using a fairly old one because even though we're going to be real careful and not try to jab the rock when we're rough felting, it still might, so don't use one you're too precious about. You'll need wool roving. You don't need a ton, just enough to put a decently thick layer around. You'll see how much later. You'll need a shallow dish of some kind that you can fill with warm water. You will need a dish soap as well, and just some towels to cover your work surface. All right, let's get started. You're going to start by loosely wrapping your stone with wool. You don't want it to be super thick, so you can fiddle with it until it's sort of that nice thickness. You don't want to be able to see the rock through it, and you want it to be able to go all the way around. Overlap your edges and then very, very carefully felt them together. Now, I'm not felting into the rock, I'm felting just beside the rock to catch those edges and push them into the other felt. We're going to do more felting as we go along. This is just to keep it secure for the meantime. Now we're going to want to do a layer the other way as well. It's almost like wrapping a gift. Again, just slightly felt those ends down. Now that you've got it slightly covered, you're going to go in and start felting. This is going to be a fairly rough felt just to make sure that there's no bald spots on your rock. You're going to be felting at a pretty severe angle so that you're not felting into the rock, so it'll take some time before it starts to feel easy to handle. Make sure you cover up any sort of bald spots by pulling and wrapping and felting. Continue felting until it feels like your rock won't poke out or fall out of any pockets in your felt. Now that is roughly felted, it still has some give to it, as you can see, but there's no real bald spots and there's no parts where the stone is going to start poking out. Now, if you just want to do one color, you can leave it there and just skip straight to wet felting, but if you want to add some other designs or colors, we're going to do that now. Now, I like my rocks to look kind of like the texture of rocks, so I try to imitate veins in the rocks by spiraling different colors around. You can decide sort of which ways you want them to go, if you want them to go in circular patterns or stripes or random, and then just start laying it on top. Start by felting on the ends first and then moving on to the middle parts. You can start by just getting sort of the rough patterns you want down, and then we'll go in and felt a bit harder afterwards. Once you've put on all the colors that you'd like, go over it again with a really good felt, making sure to tuck in all those end bits really well. Make sure to move the rock around and spin it and flip it so you know you're felting from multiple angles in all the different places. We're not looking for a perfect felt just yet. The wet felting will really do most of the work for us, but you just want to make sure that your design isn't going to get rubbed off as soon as you start wet felting. All right, now that our rock is fairly well felted, you can see obviously it still has some give to it, but all the ends are all tucked in quite nicely, so we are ready to wet felt. Our next step is going to be to fill a shallow dish with some warm water, so I will be right back. We have our warm water here. We're just gonna move everything else aside for a second. Now, the first thing you want to do is take your dish soap and place about a dime-sized amount in your palm. Like that. Then you're going to want to rub the soap between both your palms. You may need to add slightly more depending on the size of your rock. Now, before you even introduce it to the water, take your rock and gently roll it between your soapy hands. I find it works best to sort of go in the direction of the pattern that you felted, because you don't want to start pulling it off right away. Now, slightly wet your hands and get back in there. Things are going to start foaming up right away. Now you want to be a bit gentle at first while the wool starts to felt, so you can keep that lovely pattern you just made. And add a bit more water. And start rolling a bit more aggressively. At the start, it's gonna feel like it's going to be too big. You'll see it has like it's almost in a pocket, and that's okay. That's going to tighten up as we roll. Once it starts going, you can even add a bit more water. As it's starting to firm up, you can be a little bit more vigorous with your felting, making sure to get all of the sides of your stone. You're going to want to do this for about 5 minutes. Now, don't ask me the science behind wet felting, because I just started myself and I do not know, but I do know it is amazing and super fun. Once it's all good and felted, you can even completely wet your rock and really get in there. You don't want there to be sort of excess wool, so if you still feel like there's a gap between the wool and your rock, just keep felting. All right, once your felt is good and tight on your rock, it is time to go rinse it under some cool water. All right, you're going to want to rinse your rock until it is not soapy anymore with cool water. You can squeeze it a bit to get the soap out. Once you can squeeze it without a bunch of soap coming out, then it is done. And that is how you make wet felted rocks for pattern weights, paper weights, or even just decoration. I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up and maybe subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.